Ladies and gentlemen, what we're going to do now is we're going to take some of the insights that we've had from the morning session. And I'm keeping a very close eye on time through until about 20 to 12 today. I'm going to lead a panel discussion. We're going to sit here, we're going to talk. I need to say this to you. I am, and Tumelo, you will bear me out on this. We are, certainly in Tumelo's case, you would have seen an apt example of that. We are broadcasters. Therefore, we love the sound of our own voices. We really do. Nothing gives us greater pleasure than standing up and talking and listening to ourselves. Having said that, though, none of this is going to work unless you engage with the audience or with the panel members yourself. We have assembled, and I'm going to start asking our panel members to make their way up to the front. Luvuyo, Rani, are you with us? If you can start coming up. Bonang, Mohale, I think you were getting mic'd up at the back, if you don't mind. Refiloe, Seseane, if you can come up. Motola, I haven't seen you yet, Mila. I know you're in the audience somewhere. And also Manglin, Pillay. If you could join me on the stage, I'll make a formal introduction in just a moment. But I'd be very happy if you have questions to ask them, if you engage with them. Otherwise, it just ain't going to work at all. So if I could just ask our panel members to make their way slowly up to the stage. Manglin? How did I know you were Manglin Pillay? I wonder. Okay. All right. All right, Luvuyo, we've got you there, and we're just waiting for the others. Mr. Motola from Brand South Africa, if you'll join us. Refiloe, Seseane, I saw you getting mic'd up, so up you come as well. Bonang, I've known you, sir, for 20 years. I can promise you that there will not be one fracking question that I ask you. Who are we missing? Manglin's with us. Miller's Miller Motola. So are you ready? Miller Motola is coming up, and we've got the rest of the panel. If I could just ask our technical crew, if you wouldn't mind, guys, just to remove the podium so I can sit on the seat, and I will switch microphones. Okay, thank you very much. This is what's known, everybody, in our business as an awkward moment as we wait. Perhaps you could all give Mr. Motola a huge round of applause when he eventually arrives on the stage. Okay, or we could start slow. Do not start. Okay, you can. Okay, Miller, you made it just in time. There we go. Good to see you, sir.
Very good to see you.
Have a seat. There we go. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, and Bonang, try not, if you don't mind, to do a business deal while you're sitting on the stage. That is for lunch, okay? Folks, I think all of you, to a greater or lesser extent, have been with us today. You've heard some of the inspiration that have been imparted. Just as an opening part of this process, if we can do that. And Luvuyo, let me start with you. I just want to get an understanding of what your understanding is, or your notion of leadership is.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. It's great for me. Maybe I need to probably bring it from a context in terms of, I used to work as a teacher in Kailicha. And then I saw government introducing new curriculum. So teachers could not use computers. And I resigned. I started selling computer on the boot of a car. So people say to me, I'm mad. I think from there, and even not from only selling, mad to me, they were saying to me, I'm selling computers and selling back to them. So there was much more resistance, and others could not understand being a teacher and selling computers. And for me, the focus, it was more from teachers. And then after that, I realized the community at large, that from ICT gap, it's big. So I think it's to face these challenges where people will say to you, you can't do it. It's not possible, it's never done. Who are you? You can do it.
And the organization Silulo Ulutho Technologies, I'm
Yes.
correct, okay? Manglin, as far as you're concerned, just give us an overview, maybe an introduction, and then just, again, what your understanding is, what your sense of leadership is, before we move on to some of the more substantive issues.
Sure. Is this thing on? We can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, we
well?
can hear you.
All right, so I'm Manglin Pillay, and I work for the South African Institution of Civil Engineering. I'm the chief executive there.
So you have a real job as
I
opposed
do have a real job, or I pretend to.
And I
I
promise
think-
you there will be no tender questions. Okay. Nervous laughter from the audience.
Yeah, love me tender. Okay, I think leadership has always been, for me, about purpose. Identifying your purpose, what you hear about, why were you born, what makes you tick, what excites you, what annoys you, and dealing with that. And the reason I say that is because thereafter passion drives. Not money, not people, not circumstance, not political dispensation, but passion. And if one could identify that, whether one gets paid or not, one's going to make a difference. I want to make a quick point. I just want to take the opportunity there. We all know about the incredible leadership that we had around 1994. Very recently, I've just been noticing that we've got so many acting positions in government in terms of leadership, and people being suspended. We look at ESCOM, we look at AXA, we look at various leading organizations. People are just being suspended. And there's just this absence of leadership.
And an absence of continuity.
And an absence of continuity, which is exactly what I want to talk about. And I look at the young people seated here, and there's no mentoring that's happening. So I think we should actually change the topic. It's tomorrow's leaders today. And we need these young people, including ourselves, to respond in leadership today, not tomorrow.
All right. Refiloe Seseane, founder of 1828. You have a fan in the audience. Or you brought your mother. I'm not sure. Pick it up, and then, as I say, we'll start talking about mining down into some of the leadership issues. What's your broad understanding?
Thank you, Jeremy. I'm Refiloe Seseane, the founder of 1828. We're an award-winning non-profit organization that services young women in disadvantaged communities. So we do life skills workshops for girls in grade 11 and 12. We've got a mentorship program that matches our girls to professional women for additional support. And we have a financial assistance program where we give girls money for tuition, textbooks, accommodation to study a degree at any university in any discipline. And I think that leadership is self-directed. Before you can lead others, you need to be able to lead yourself. For me, leaders are readers. Leaders are people who are constantly investing in themselves. And I'm running an organization that uses education as a tool for empowerment, and education, I think, is the cornerstone of true leadership. The second thing that I'd like to add is about the quality of the followership, because you can't be a leader without followers. And I think that real leaders are the ones who invest in their followers, who take time to get to know their followers and develop a lot of the innate skills and talents that followers may not necessarily always see in themselves. So it's about authenticity, and it's self-directed.
I want to say the following. Thank you. I want to say the following about Bonang Mohale. And we, as I say, we've known each other for many, many years. Just last week, I think, sir, I was interviewing you on doing a radio interview with you. The one thing I admire about Bonang, and there are only two other people that share his trait, and that's the ability to talk without breathing. There are two other people. One is Mangosuthu Buthelezi. The other is Tony Leon. They all have gills on the side of their, because as a radio broadcaster, Tumelo, if you're still here, you'll know this. What we listen for in order to interrupt is the breath point. So at some point when the interviewee breathes, we will come in and do the interview. There, you've learned something today. Bonang never breathes. What's your understanding of leadership? Deep breath.
Jeremy, thank you for having me. I feel absolutely honored to be surrounded by such amazing, good quality human beings, especially Mary Refiloe. Nna lebitso la ka ke Bonang Mohale, ke Mokwena Mokotedi, ke Mokoko, ke Moqoqopelo, ke Leruarua la Morampokane, nna ha ke bone ke banana, ke bona ke ditsha dikgolo fela. Anybody that feels called upon to lead is a leader. Today, I'm hoping that when we talk to these young people, that's why I didn't shave, so that I can show a little bit of gray, so that I could intimidate them a little bit.
or you were just trying to look cool and it doesn't work.
Yes. So I'm hoping that as we speak about leadership, we'll recognize that we are from the school of leaders that come from smart organizations. And amongst the audience today, that there'll be people who really aspire to belong to healthy organizations. Smart organizations are the ones that have systems and processes. They're driven by IT. They've got programs. But healthy organizations are the ones where you increase clarity, you increase the morale and motivation of your own people, you increase productivity, and you reduce the politics, and you reduce the confusion. More than anything else, you reduce the turnover, especially of scarce and critical skills. Thanks, Jeremy.
Okay, Mr. Motola, Mala Motola.
Thanks, Jeremy. At the risk of saying I agree with everything that's been said.
Moving right along.
Look, for me, leadership is both about purpose and context, and I think also the other things that have been mentioned and followers, etc. But I think it's important that as leaders we recognize that leadership is not positional, but it is more about context and purpose. So if you, for an example, are able to respond to your environment in a particular way, that in itself is a demonstration of leadership, because we all are leaders. It's not positions that bequeath on us the role of leadership. You have to understand the context and you have to respond accordingly, and you have to understand the purpose or have a sense of purpose, and that in itself is leadership for me.
All of you, to a greater or lesser extent, I am assuming, have overcome adversity. One of the speakers a little earlier said that you can start out managing an organization, you can have the perfect plan, but the perfect plan always runs into wrinkles. It also has hiccups. A question again to all of you. In your careers, you've encountered adversity. How have you overcome it? And if you can find a great example, all the better. Luvuyo, I'm sorry I'm putting you on the spot.
No,
but you're a teacher, you can think quickly.
Yeah, no. I think to start in a situation where an area that in the township where you don't get so much role modeling. I mean, you look at the taxi industry, the spaza shops and the ship-ins. You know, from the service-orientated, you don't see someone to aspire to that you can grow up. So to start on your own, I mean, you start without any funding. You start through Mgalelo, where you group teachers to pay for themselves computers. That on its own, it becomes like a difficult point of view. Because, I mean, like, even the Costa Light, the boot of a car that we are driving as your office, it has to be repossessed because you can't able to pay. In the house that we are staying in, it has to be repossessed. So that on its own is like your back at an end, and we have to make it possible and make sure that you succeed in that difficult environment.
But you must surely, and Manglin, perhaps you can pick this up, there are dark moments when you have put so much on the table, where there is so much risk that you have to handle, and yet you say to yourself, I'm keeping on with this. What is sparking that drive?
I'm gonna replace the word adversity, and it's pretty much the same thing with suffering. And I hope there are people in the audience that can appreciate what I'm saying. My experience has been how to enjoy suffering, and that's difficult. My experience has been also that in terms of risk,
so how to enjoy suffering.
How to enjoy suffering, but on one.
You saw 50 Shades of Grey last time.
It sounds like a rash. My experience has been I didn't have much to risk. So, how do you fight somebody like that who's got nothing to lose? Let me share an example. The example is, my mom has always believed in things like striving. Education was key in our home, but we really couldn't afford that. The area I come from is a little town called Verulam on the north coast. Does anybody know where that is? Verulam? Yeah. Okay, it doesn't matter. And we really couldn't afford education, but we had to make the application. And she sat with us, apply for bursaries and that sort of thing. And there was little chance of getting anything, let alone studying in Johannesburg. And people who went to Wits University were usually the rich kids, from our perspective then,
Yeah.
obviously things have changed now, but to get going and make the application. And getting in was a big thing. But if we had focused on the circumstance at the time, we wouldn't have applied. We would have worked in the local factory instead. So I think that the trick is to make the effort, despite what appears to be no resources.
Refiloe, what about you?
I'd say the biggest challenge was the Great Recession of 2008. And of all the crazy ideas I've had, I think possibly the craziest was starting a non-profit organization at the height of the global recession. And it had this very peculiar name, 1828, that no one had ever heard about. And fundraising was a huge challenge. On a personal level, trying to make the transition from television and media to investment management and economics, because that's my academic background, to now stepping into the non-profit space, people would often come up to me and say, well, what are you? Are you an economist? Are you a TV actress? Or are you running a non-profit organization? And initially that used to cause me a lot of anxiety because it made me feel as though I didn't quite know where I belonged or what strengths I should play to. But we're speaking to young people now who are millennials, and they call themselves slashies. So I'm a tech designer / /////. And I think one of the lessons that I took away from the recession is that it really helps having a diverse skill set, because knowledge that you gain can never go to waste. And there's a lot of things that I use from my media background that are very much relevant to my work in 1828. Academic qualifications aside and networks aside, everything that you learn and everything that you are, I think you need to embrace and own, because you would not have been born with the ability to pursue multiple tasks and accomplish multiple activities if you were not intended to. So don't confine yourself, I think, is one takeaway for me. And don't disregard everything that has built you up to the point that you're at now.
Bonang, that's about understanding where you've come from and having a clear path to where you want to go, and not sticking and not deviating from that.
Absolutely. And for me, I think my whole life has been characterized by adversity. And I think this is what has built resilience in a lot of us and in a lot of the people around the room, from the days when I moved from the dusty streets of Katlehong to go to Wits to study medicine, and to be accepted but have to apply for special ministerial consent, and it only came on the 27th of April. There were 27 of us at Wits at that time who wanted to become doctors, and by the time it came and the minister said yes only to 8 of the 27, you saw the unfairness, the unjust of the system at that time. But I've always found solace with every adversity that I've gone through to say, but our forebears have laid a very firm foundation, that we stand here tall and proud, that we can give effect to the South Africa of Nelson Mandela's dream, that all of us ought to be involved with this important but yet unfinished business of nation building, because only nation building can lead us to a place that is much better than the dark old one where we come from.
Where is the balance between doing good for the country, the nation building, and doing good for yourself?
I think it starts by that recognition, the realization that we just can't be the conspicuous consumers of what our parents were not able to do without finding something to be useful about, in search of meaningfulness and purpose. So we get a lot of joy when we see an opportunity of touching young lives through our acts, but most importantly, through our deeds and our commitment.
Motola from Brand SA, do you agree that you've got to almost embrace adversity or suffering sometimes, that it's actually a good thing on that rocky journey?
Look, it is part of the journey, as you rightly say, and the important thing is tenacity and never losing sight of the purpose or the end goal. In fact, for me personally, really, it's about seeing setbacks or adversity as just that, a temporary setback. Take it as a learning, because I always say there are no mistakes in life.
But hang on,
learnings.
when you're in the moment, though,
Yeah.
it's very difficult to have that mindset. You know, when the creditors are calling, when cash flow is tight, it's difficult to say to yourself, I'm in the moment.
Well,
How do you rise above that?
You have to rise above that. That is part of leadership. You have to understand the context and say, there is this temporary setback, this is adversity. I have a clear sense of where I need to get to. Let me understand what shapes or informs where I am now, and therefore what is my response to it. Because if you do not step outside that situation and look at it objectively, yes, you can get sucked up emotionally into it. And I think that's the tenacity that leaders have. Someone said, the characteristic of leaders is that sometimes they are stubborn. But I don't think it's so much stubbornness as that persistence with that vision and sight that they've set themselves for. And I think it is important to have that. One has had so many setbacks in life. I'll give you an example. I could easily, like Bonang said, ended up in the dusty streets of our township, and I couldn't go to university. But to be able to get to where I needed to, I went and worked on the mines. I was even a truck driver. And because I knew precisely where I needed to go, I saw those impediments as temporary setbacks, and I focused on what could be achieved. And I think
But mentally, you've got to be very strong in that respect.
Indeed,
Single-minded purposes, you've also
purpose is
an absolute focus.
Jeremy, if I
Manglin,
may?
very, very quickly,
Yeah.
then I was wondering, because we are keeping to a schedule here, one or two questions from the audience, and then we are going to move on.
Yes, I made
Pick
the
it up
point
very
earlier that
quickly.
only in retrospection one could see, what the purpose of that suffering was. And in that moment, when all doors are closed and the bank's calling and you don't have, I think a lot of personal introspection at that time, spiritual founding, and various people do various things, depend on the faith-based protocols and so on. Good friends have a lot, stable families, having mentors that you can talk to, practical things like that. But from what I found for me personally was a lot of spiritual founding, getting immersed in that, because that has a sense of self-building to help with suffering.
Next time the bank phones, you can give them Bonang's number, because Shell's doing very well at the moment. Anybody in the audience with a question, very quickly? Can we raise the lights, maybe, just so we can see? I'm struggling a little bit. Gentleman over here. Do we have a microphone? Quick. Okay, and folks, I seem to remember saying last year to all of you, it's a question briefly. It's not a keynote speech. Off you go. Okay.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Mohale Kenneth. I'm 24 years old. By the way, Jeremy, I admire your sense of humor. It's very key. I have a question. My question is very short and simple. I would like to know the difference between leadership and management. That's my question.
Refiloe, let's start with you. And again, let's keep them as quick as we can. It's a good question. Thank you very much. And thank you for your kind words.
I think leadership provides the overall strategy. Leadership is the one responsible for the formulation of the vision, whereas management would be the one who handle the complexities in the day-to-day operations. That's a very generic kind of response. I don't know if anyone else would like to add to my definition, but that's how I see it. Leadership is more visionary and strategic. Management is more tactical. They execute and they're responsible for operations.
I think also for me, from leadership is more, as you were saying, that the visionaries provide directions and see beyond. And the management is like looking at operational issues on the dailies to see how things are happening in the business.
Bonang?
Management is about getting things done through other people. Leadership is being genuinely obsessed with the development of others. Management is about the effectiveness and efficiencies in climbing the corporate ladder of success, whilst leadership begs the question as to whether is this ladder leading against the correct wall in the first instance.
By the way, Bonang's new book, The Art of Delegation While I Play Golf. Just kidding, sir. Anybody else? Okay, lady over here, very quickly.
Hi, I'm Portia. I have a very short question to ask. As leaders, how do you deal with inefficiencies like poor service deliveries in different organizations and entities? Thank you.
Miller, would you like to pick up?
I think the most important thing, someone said earlier here that leadership is about making decisions, and it involves making unpopular decisions. So as a leader, you have to be very firm about where you are going. And in order for you to realize the vision of the organization, you have to make sure that you have people who perform and who perform to the required standard. And if they don't, you have to have those honest and brutal conversations about getting performance done. Otherwise, you are also not reflecting the necessary accountability as a leader.
Folks, I mentioned at the start of the session today that we don't live in the 24-hour news cycle anymore. We live in the 2.4-second news cycle. We have an immensely packed program today. So for the wisdom, for the insight, and thank you for touching on the topic To our panel members, thank you very much indeed. I'm going to ask you to exit the stage. Thank you indeed.